What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue with our 2025 college football schedule preview and very early projected record series. The Vanderbilt Comedores are up next. Before we look ahead to 2025, let's take a look back at what Vanderbilt did in 2024. Here are my projections and predictions last year for Vanderbilt. My projection for this team was 4-8, and then my prediction for them was 3-9. And I think a lot of people last year, including myself, really agreed with these projection and predictions last year. We were kind of expecting Vanderbilt to be the worst team in the SEC, but no, it was the complete opposite of that. Vanderbilt coming off a very surprising season last year, making it to a bowl game, going 6-6 last year in the regular season, and then if you count their bowl game victory at the end of the year, this team went 7-6 overall, so a solid season for Vanderbilt. I don't want to call it a decent year because they just went 6-6 and 7-6 overall, but it was a solid season for Vanderbilt. Again, they were a surprise team for sure in 2024, and they had a really tough schedule last year. Here was that schedule for Vanderbilt in 2024. Again, they were able to go to a bowl game with this tough schedule. First off, you look at who they played in the non-conference. They played Virginia Tech, Alcorn State, and then they also played Ball State and then also Georgia State on the road. Yeah, they lost to Georgia State there on September the 14th, but they beat Virginia Tech. That's pretty much where the surprise started to come from. Or maybe it was after that Alabama game. I think it was probably after that Alabama game. And then obviously they beat Ball State and Alcorn State. So not a tough non-conference schedule last year. But then the SEC schedule, you look at who they played at home last year. They had Alabama, Texas, South Carolina, and Tennessee all at home last year. So they lost to South Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas, but they only lost to Texas by 3 points. So they won, they lost by 3 points in that game, but they beat Alabama. That was the biggest win for Vanderbilt last year in 2024. And obviously, I still think it was one of the biggest upsets in all of college football last year in the 2024 season as well. So yeah, they beat Alabama, and then you look at their road schedule in the SEC. They played on the road at Missouri, at Kentucky, at Auburn, and at LSU. So they had a pretty tough road schedule, but it wasn't quite as bad as the home schedule was. But they lost to Missouri in double overtime, lost a close one there. Kentucky and Auburn, they beat both of those teams on the road. And then obviously LSU, they lost that game by one possession. I think they lost that game by 6 points. So, yeah, very tough schedule last year for Vanderbilt, but with this schedule, they were able to go 6-6 last year and coming off a really surprising season last year. What does it look like for 2025? Here is that schedule for the Vanderbilt Comedores for 2025. Before we go game by game, let's take a look at who Vanderbilt plays in the non-conference first. So this is their non-conference schedule. They will play Charleston Southern at Virginia Tech. So they play Virginia Tech again, but this time it will be a road game. And instead of playing in week 1, they'll play in week number 2. And again, they'll play that game on the road. Then it's Georgia State and Utah State. So they play Georgia State again, but this time they will play them at home. And then obviously instead of Ball State, it will be Utah State this time. So non-conference schedule pretty similar to last year. You got an FCS team, and then you got Georgia State and Utah State, a couple of Group of 5 teams, and then you got a Power 4 team in Virginia Tech, and this time it will be on the road. So that's your non-conference schedule. Let's now take a look at the home schedule in the SEC for Vanderbilt. They will play LSU, Missouri, Auburn, and Kentucky all at home this year. LSU definitely is going to be probably their toughest home game. LSU's got a lot of talent coming up this year in 2025. They've added a lot of players in the transfer portal. So that might be a game where Vanderbilt is like an underdog in, but maybe a heavy underdog at least. And again, they only lost by 6 points last year to LSU. Then obviously Missouri, you get them at home this year. You lost it to them in double overtime. And then you got Auburn and Kentucky. Missouri, Auburn, and Kentucky, very winnable games here for Vanderbilt. Again, LSU is going to be tough, but 3 winnable games in my opinion here for Vanderbilt for 2025 if you just based it off of last year. The away schedule looks like this. They'll play on the road at South Carolina, at Alabama, at Texas, and at Tennessee. So yeah, very brutal road schedule here for Vanderbilt. It's one of the toughest SEC road schedules that I've seen so far throughout the SEC teams. South Carolina, always a really tough place to play. But Alabama, Texas, and Tennessee, Those are all three very tough road games here for Vanderbilt. Obviously, Alabama, they're going to come out with revenge on their minds because they got beat by this Vanderbilt team last year. Texas, they only beat Vanderbilt by 3, so they want like a better game. And then obviously Tennessee, Vanderbilt kept them close there for a while in the first half, but Tennessee definitely was the better team last season. So again, a very tough road schedule here for Vanderbilt. Let's now take a look at the schedule here and go game by game now for Vanderbilt. Again, they start things off with Charleston Southern on August 30th. Then you got Virginia Tech the next week on the road on September 6th. Then you also open up SEC play. You also play on the road here at South Carolina on September 13th. So you got back-to-back road games there with Virginia Tech and South Carolina. Yeah, that's kind of tough there, for the early part of the season here for Vanderbilt. Next week they play Georgia State on September 20th, and they also play Utah State on September 27th. Then they go on the road to play Alabama on October the 4th, and then they get a bye week after playing Alabama, which I think is a really good spot for a bye week. They'll play LSU coming out of the bye week on October 18th. Then you got Missouri after that on October 25th. Then on the road at Texas on November 1st. And then at home against Auburn on November 8th. They get a bye week. Their second bye week comes right here before playing Kentucky on November 22nd. Not a bad spot there for a bye week either. And then they close things out with Tennessee on the road on November 29th. So again, another tough schedule here for Vanderbilt for 2025. Really similar to last year, but instead of playing Alabama, Texas, and Tennessee at home, they will play all those teams on the road this year. So that's what makes the schedule a lot tougher here for Vanderbilt. But let's now get a projection here for the Comedores. This is the scale I'll be using here for their official projection. Basically, if it's a 1% game in the red, that's pretty much counted as an automatic loss, and then your 20% games in the orange, that's a percentage where Vanderbilt's going to be about a double-digit underdog. 40% games in the yellow, they'll be about a 6 or 7 point underdog in that percentage, and then 50-50 games, those will stay in the white, games that really could go either way. 60% games in the purple, they'll be favored by 6 or 7 points in that percentage, and then your 80% games in the blue, they'll be favored by double digits in that percentage, and then your green games are pretty much your automatic wins in that percentage at 99%. And I think you got a couple of him here to start out for Vanderbilt. You got Charleston Southern, the FCS team, and then you got Utah State. Charleston Southern, I think, is definitely over that 95 to 99% mark. Maybe Utah State is at 90% because you look at Vanderbilt over the years, they have struggled big time against Group of 5 teams. And we saw that last year when they lost to Georgia State. I don't think they'll probably lose to Utah State, though. That's a game they probably should win pretty easily. And then same thing with Charleston Southern. It would definitely be a big shocker if they were to lose one of these two games. They're not guaranteed wins, definitely for Vanderbilt, but they're counted as automatic wins here in this projection. So we'll put those two games in the green. And then I'm going to put Georgia State here in the blue. Georgia State beat Vanderbilt last year. That's the reason why it's in the blue. It could be in the purple as well. If it was on the road at Georgia State, I probably would put it in the purple. But I think Vanderbilt will be favored by double digits. Vanderbilt is obviously the better team. And I think Vanderbilt, even though it's a Group of 5 team, they should come out really fired up because they lost to this Group of 5 team last year in Georgia State. And Georgia State is a sneaky good Group of 5 team, it seems like almost every year. So yeah, those 3 games are counted as wins. The blue game is not really counted as an automatic win, but it's counted as a slight win. Let's just put it that way here for Vanderbilt. And then the rest of the games, I don't think you can favor Vanderbilt by, 6 or 7 points, but we now go to the games where I think Vanderbilt's going to be underdogs in. I don't have any games in the red, surprisingly, but I do have 3 games on here where I think they're going to be double-digit underdogs. Alabama, Texas, and Tennessee. I think they'll be double-digit underdogs against those 3 teams on the road. Alabama, because Vanderbilt beat them last year, that's the reason why it's mainly in the orange, but another reason is just because it's on the road, and how competitive against, Texas, for Vanderbilt last year, of how competitive they were against the Longhorns. That's also the reason why it's in the orange, but these are games that Vanderbilt's going to have really no chance in. They'll have a slight chance, but not really a big chance to, pull off the upset here. I know they did it last year to Alabama, but that game was at home for Vanderbilt, so that was kind of the difference from last year to this year. And I think, again, Vanderbilt will be double-digit underdogs in both of those games. And then, obviously, Tennessee, having to play the Vols every year in rivalry weekend, that's always going to be really tough for Vanderbilt. Tennessee's definitely been the better team as of late. And because it's in Knoxville, that's the reason why it does come out to be in the orange. So I think all 3 of these games, Vanderbilt will be double-digit underdogs in all 3 of them. And I think you could put 2 games here in the yellow where I think they're going to be like a 6 or 7 point underdog. And these 2 games, I think Vanderbilt will have a chance to probably pull off the upset in one of these 2 games. South Carolina and LSU. South Carolina, because it's on the road, that's because it's, a yellow game. It would probably be a 50-50 game. It could be an orange game as well. You can make an argument there. But I think South Carolina and Vanderbilt are pretty close in, tiers and everything. South Carolina might be the better team as of right now just because they had a better year last year than Vanderbilt. But these are 2 surprise teams from last year. So this is kind of the battle here between 2 surprise teams in the SEC. And then obviously LSU because it's at home. I think Vanderbilt's got quite a chance here to pull off the upset. Not saying they're going to. This is just based off of where they were last year. Because, again, Vanderbilt might not be as good as they were last year. 2022, they had a pretty good year at 5-7, and then they took a drop-off in 2023. And we thought we were going to have a drop-off from last year, but no. They went to a bowl game, and they could probably have a drop-off this year. You never know about Vanderbilt. Again, they had a very tough schedule this year as well. So those 2 games, I think Vanderbilt will be a 6 or 7 point underdog in both of them. And then that leaves you with 4 50-50 games. Virginia Tech, Missouri, Auburn, and Kentucky. These are all 4 games that really can go either way. Auburn and Kentucky, 2 teams that you beat last year. You can make an argument that both of those games should be in the purple, but I'm going to stick with it and put it in the 50-50 range. Missouri, they competed against the Tigers last year in double overtime. I'm going to go ahead and put that as a 50-50 game. And then they obviously beat Virginia Tech last year. This time it's on the road. That's the reason why it's a 50-50 game. So what does the projection come out to be here for Vanderbilt based on how tough this schedule is? Well, we count the 2 green games as wins, the 1 blue game as a win as well. Then you count the orange games as slight losses, and then also you average out those 2 games in the yellow at 40%. Then average out these 4 50-50 games, and odds would say they probably win 2 out of the 4 50-50 games. I think they'll split them, and then you got those 3 more wins against your non-conference teams. That's going to give you 5 total wins, and they'll be underdogs in the rest of those games. That's going to give you a projected record of 5-7. So I think that's a pretty fair projection. I know Vanderbilt had a really good year last year, but I don't know if they'll be as good as they were last year. You never know about Vanderbilt. Again, they are the worst team in the SEC. Again, it seems like, in 2022 they were heading in the right direction, then they took a drop-off. That could be the case again in 2025, but best case is definitely making it to a bowl game at 6-6, and then worst case probably 4-8. But again, a very tough schedule. That's the reason why the projection is 5-7 here for Vanderbilt for 2025. Do you guys agree or disagree? Let me know your thoughts about Vanderbilt's schedule down in the comments below as well. Is it tough or not so tough? Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.